Silhouette cutting machines offer a few methods to cut various material types. These methods fall under two categories. The first category of cutting is cutting with a mat. The second is cutting without a mat, sometimes referred to as matless cutting. Cutting with a mat can be done with most materials as they are placed onto a cutting mat and sent through a Silhouette cutting machine. This includes the Silhouette Cameo 1 through 4, Portrait 1 and 2, and Curio. Preparing the Silhouette Studio software to cut with a mat is as simple as selecting an appropriate cutting mat for your machine and choosing a cut action in the Send panel. Now let's talk about cutting without a mat, or matless cutting. One cutting style that allows you to cut without a mat is the kiss cut. Materials that have their own backing, such as vinyl, heat transfer, and sticker sheets, can be fed directly into a Silhouette cutting machine without a cutting mat. The Silhouette machine can then perform a cutting action that cuts through the material surface, but not all the way through the backing. This is often referred to as a kiss cut, as the blade only skims the backing layer. Silhouette cutting machines like the Portrait 1 and 2 and Cameo 1 through 4 have always been able to kiss cut materials without a mat if the material has a backing or liner. The material also must fit between the rollers to be gripped securely without a mat during the entire cut job. Prepare this in the Silhouette Studio software by selecting Cutting Mat None in the Page Setup panel. Set the media size to match the actual media. For a sticker sheet, we can choose Letter. For 9-inch vinyl, adjust the width to 9 inches. In the Send panel, choose the correct material. The action should be cut. With a kiss cut, the blade settings should be deep enough to cut through the material itself, but not enough to cut completely through the backing. You can use the default settings on existing materials or create your own settings for new materials and verify with a test cut to make sure this is the case. The second style of matless cutting is the pop-out cut, which is new to the Silhouette Cameo 4. Some select paper and cardstock materials that do not have their own backing can be fed directly into the Cameo 4 cutting machine without a cutting mat. Because of a channel that runs under the blade area, the Cameo 4 can perform a special cutting action, which cuts all the way through the material even though there is not a cutting mat. It does this by lifting the blade in tiny segments as it cuts, leaving part of the material connected to the full page. The resulting cut job can be popped out of the material once the cutting action has been completed. Pop-out matless cutting can be beneficial in preparing pages in advance so you have less tiny pieces to keep track of. It can be good for saving time on cuts so you don't have to apply and remove from a mat every time, and it can avoid the curling you may get from peeling designs off of super sticky mats. Prepare for pop-out cutting in Silhouette Studio by going back to the design page. In the Page Setup panel, choose Cameo for your machine. Auto Cameo is fine too. Set Cutting Mat to None. That's important for pop-out matless cutting. I'm cutting letter-size cardstock, so I'll set media size as letter. I'm going to cut out these tags. Make sure your design fits within the red cut border. Check the box to show the cut border if necessary. Make sure your Cameo 4 is turned on and connected, either by USB cable or Bluetooth. Go to the Send panel and click on the machine icon to select your Cameo 4 if it's not already selected. When choosing a material from the main default list, the software knows whether to automatically choose Cut or Pop-Out Cut for the action based on your cutting mat selection. Paper and similar stiff materials that usually need a mat to cut completely through should use Pop-Out Cut when you have no mat selected in the Page Setup panel. With my default paper type selected and adjustments made to settings based on a test cut, this page is ready to load between the rollers and cut with the special Pop-Out Cut action. If you create a custom material, you should be aware of additional steps regarding the cut actions. To add a custom material, click the Material drop-down arrow and choose Add New Material Type at the bottom of the list. You can also access this by clicking the More button and click the plus symbol. Choose the tab Cameo 4 Tool 1. There's a category drop-down list where you need to designate what category of material you are cutting. I'm setting up cardstock first, so I'll choose Card. These categories tell the software how to behave based on your combination of mat selection and media selection. Click the plus symbol down next to Cut and choose Add Pop-Out Cut Action. Adjust your blade settings based on test cuts of your material. Double-click on the material name to rename it, then save and exit. Choose that new custom material from the drop-down and double-check the rest of your settings. Be sure to adjust your rollers on your Cameo 4 to accommodate the material you're using. Check the action and settings to make sure it will do a pop-out cut as you expect. With your design ready and media loaded between the rollers, you can send your design to be cut. Note that if you are setting up custom materials for media with a backing, like vinyl, make sure your category is set to the appropriate type. Categories of vinyl, heat transfer, or other backed materials assume you want to kiss cut your material when no mat is selected. Make sure your vinyl or other backed media settings are for a kiss cut and will not cut completely through the backing. Here are a couple of final tips. Pop-out matless cutting with the Cameo 4 is not intended for thin or flexible media like fabric or thin papers. And remember, Cameo models older than the Cameo 4 should always use a mat for any material without a backing or that you want to cut completely through. We hope this gives you a better understanding of your cutting choices with various materials, and we hope you enjoy the new pop-out cut feature with the Silhouette Cameo 4.